welcome back to another episode of Net Talk. This is after round 6, the final round of the MAVSL. I'm Alex.
I'm Mitch. Welcome back.
Welcome back. We'll take you through a little bit of what happened in a pretty action-packed last round.
A lot of the line.
Yeah,
Like
a lot of the line.
A lot of season end defining moments of where teams finish on the ladder to put themselves in a good position for the semi-finals.
Yeah, a couple real interesting changes in the top 4 based on this new format. We'll actually look and talk about the fact that 3 women's teams tied on the same amount of ranking points.
Pretty rare. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Yeah, I guess it happens when you get a point, 2 ranking points for winning a set. Like no other volleyball is formatted like that.
It's also, yeah.
So it makes it interesting that a few teams maybe got punished for dropping sets earlier in the season, dropping sets late this season. So it really might have changed up potential matchups. We'll talk about a couple teams maybe getting an unfavourable matchup based on what was possible.
Yeah, definitely.
We'll jump straight into the ladies first.
Yeah.
Because that was a very interesting thing, we'll say. Isn't it interesting when the league is so close?
It is interesting when the league is really close, and it's interesting when every single game there's a lot of points up for grabs. Like you could see huge momentum swings with 5-0s, or you could see big upsets be like 3-2s, which we saw one on the weekend, and that put a potential what we assumed would be a top ranking team all the way down into third. So it is interesting when and there's so many points up for grabs, and there's these big momentum shifts that we like to see. But yeah, let's get right into it. The Perth Steel women, again, top of the ladder for the regular season.
Yeah, so they had a bye this last round. We're probably watching at home, seeing where they'd finish up, because if either Adelaide Storm or Vipers got a clean win, they could have potentially taken that first spot, but neither team did. So Perth Steel gets to hold on to that top minor premier again for another year.
Yeah. We actually said as well that I've said it multiple times, every set matters, every point matters, and that's going to be the theme of today's episode, because the top 3 women's teams are all on the same points. So WA only got the top of the ladder by the skin of their teeth. And we're going to do a little bit of a count back. So it's very, very close.
Because they actually, you would think like you get points for winning sets. So, but they actually had a better set percentage, which is what kept them in first place. And Vipers and Adelaide tied them based on getting a couple extra bonus points.
Yeah.
Which is good to see. And I don't know what they do in WA to make their program so good, because I think they had 6 new players or something to their roster of 10 was a little statistic early on in the season.
Yeah, we mentioned it like the first recap.
Yeah, they had a lot of turnover.
They're also missing one of their most veteran players, Shelby Ma. Shelby Ma? Yeah.
Yeah. Due to the ankle injury.
Due to the ankle injury in the local season.
And then next on the ladder, one of the games, a team that had the end of the season riding on the line were the Vipers. So got it wrong in my story post. I actually said unlikely they'll get second because the bonus point seemed a bit out of reach. But in the 5th set on the weekend, they won 18-7, shot them up in their total points, and they got their bonus point and then beat Adelaide Storm based on their point percentage.
By 0.06.
Yeah.
In terms of point quotient. Which is basically just like a point percentage.
Yeah. So
point ratio, rather.
I mean, didn't change the semi-final matchup. 2 or 3 doesn't matter.
But in saying that, because they lost the set to New South Wales, which arguably they probably shouldn't have, they would have been first.
Yeah.
They would have been first, and they would have had a much better lineup. I would
matchup,
argue.
I think they would have probably been a little bit more eager to verse that Pirates team versus an Adelaide Storm team who did look shaky, I guess, losing to the Canberra Heat in the final round of the season.
Yeah.
But that was a very tough, interesting game. We'll stick on the Vipers for a little longer though, because they had a close match. It was a great game to watch live at MSAC.
Yeah.
Lots of high action intensity. Like that Phoenix team came to play, even though their season was sort of
sort of done.
out of reach.
Yeah. I was talking with the head coach of that New South Wales Phoenix team, and I didn't realise we actually have the team list, but we just haven't looked at the ages because I guess not something we really look at a lot. But he mentioned that team is terrifyingly young. And to be this they haven't had the greatest season, but to be as close as what they are to some of these big hitting teams and to take sets and to be competitive, the rest of the league should be a little bit worried about what the next few years for New South Wales has in store. But yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It was a good match.
Yeah. And the other game that was on this weekend for the women was the Canberra Heat versus the Adelaide Storm.
Yeah.
A very close game. Canberra Heat getting a win in the final round is got to just be good for players' mindsets, their development, because they're also
quite a young team as well.
Quite a young team. And to know that you have it in your ability to beat what might be some people's favourites in the league.
Well, again, if Adelaide Storm had won that match, even with 3-2 rather than 2-3, they would be top of the ladder. So Canberra Heat just walked away upsetting a very strong Adelaide team and put them third on the ladder for semi-finals rather than top. And again, that's the spot that everyone's fighting for. So yeah, good on them.
Maybe other teams will be doing a little extra video before the semi-finals this weekend on how Canberra Heat was able to adapt and beat the Storm.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it was blocking. There's multiple players with multiple blocks.
Yeah.
Holly Uren got 3 blocks. We have Chelsea Durbridge getting 2. Yeah. Kiani Dodd getting 2. Amanda Uren getting 1. Like, lots of players finding ways to get blocks. And then they also weren't super high on their kill efficiency, but they had a lot of attempts. So a lot of ball was being recycled and kept in play because they were able to keep their errors low and sort of keep very versatile on their attack, which is probably what you have to do against a team like the Storm, which is we don't get to get stats on defensive side.
But you can assume that with the load that we're seeing, they must have got a good amount of digs.
Yeah, because the Storm, that's what you see every week. They're incredible on the defensive end. Their movements around their blocks, all of that is very, very good to see.
Well, both those teams attacking the ball over 110 times, whereas the other match, both teams not even getting 90 times. So that's another 30 times for each team. So you can, we didn't get to watch the match because we were at the Vipers match. I was getting some film and we were doing some crowd stuff and having a bit of fun. So we didn't get to watch the match because they're at relatively the same time. But when you see a stat like that with no defensive stats, those rallies were really long and they were really tight and intense. And I would love to find the time this week to go and have a look at that match.
Yeah. And then the final team that rounded out the top 4 to finish the season was the Queensland Pirates, who I think could have probably seen themselves dropping to 4th because they had the bye. There was no more chance of getting ranking points and they finished on 27 competition points. So a little bit down the table. We're probably just trying to see who would finish first. Yeah. Because the other 3 teams all had that available.
Well, we both had, I believe last week, we both had WA Steel dropping to 3rd or 2nd, Vipers or Adelaide taking that top spot. But Vipers or Adelaide probably not being as clinical as what they should have been against the 2 weaker teams and not taking those extra points. But this is what we're left with. A very interesting looking semi-final matchup. Keen to see how it all matches up next week.
Yeah, how what teams appear. A few players missing rounds here and there. So see who's back for the semis, but it's now like the most crucial bit. So you assume if a player can be available, they'll be there.
Yeah, you would hope so. All right, moving on to the men's though. Again, Perth Steel topping the table 2nd year in a row.
Something's in the water over there.
Yeah, something's going on over in Perth, and I would like to have a little bit of that.
So they also had a bye because men and the women's teams have byes at the same rounds, but they were well and truly secured in their first place slot. So
statistically impossible to catch. We said that last week, which we sort of knew that was going to happen.
But they were saying on the men's side, rather than that jumble and fight being for first, there was a lot more jumble around that 2, 3, 4 slot.
Yeah.
Could have really been any of the next 3 teams in that 2, 3, 4 based on the rounds, but neither of the games that happened this weekend were clean wins.
No.
So there was like a lot of that. So they were probably sitting at home watching the TV thinking, well, who would we rather verse? Because it could have been Storm, could have been Vipers.
Could have been Queensland as well.
Fourth slot, could have been Queensland as well. Like,
yeah, so the Steel on 39, and then I won't say the names because we'll get into them, but basically then it's 35, 34, 33. Like a point in each way, and very, very close in the ratios for sets and points as well. So it could have gone any way. If one team had been a little bit more clinical, it would have changed the whole lineup of this.
Or this is one of those ones earlier on in the season. Vipers dropped a set to Canberra Heat early on.
Yeah.
That would have come back and changed the ladder. Like, so good on those teams finding the other teams taking it and causing a bit of turmoil in the top of the tables.
Yeah.
But it is proof of in this format.
You got to be disciplined the whole time.
Yeah.
Like, unfortunately, Canberra Heat being a very young and very inexperienced team at this level, but they only won 2 sets all season. Yeah. So it's kind of like if you're the teams that are giving them those sets, it's kind of like you probably needed to have won those to put yourself in a better position looking for exactly this time of the season.
Yeah, the team locked into second also had a bye. It was the Queensland Pirates.
Yeah.
They were probably watching, seeing if they'd fall down the table, and they didn't. They get to hang on to second.
I think they're pretty chuffed with the fact that neither Adelaide or Vipers were that clinical on the weekend. Put them in a pretty good spot. Realistically, they were probably going to play Adelaide in the semi-final anyways, based on the way that the table was looking. But yeah, here we are.
Yeah, so they'll be hoping to match up well against Adelaide. I think they do all right in that game, player versus player, position versus position. So that'll be a real interesting semi.
Yeah.
Because the Adelaide Storm are now in third place.
Yeah.
They had that potential of getting all the way up to second. No real difference between second or third, but they kept themselves out of fourth, even though they did drop a set on the weekend. It was very interesting being at the Vipers Stadium, talking with some of the men's players and the others going, oh, they've dropped a set to the Canberra Heat. They dropped the first set of the game, 18-17. A very good first set, high flying. I guess the Canberra Heat kept rolling the dice and they kept landing sixes, winning points here and there, but then probably fell away and got a bit more inconsistent, which happens with the Canberra Heat's youth.
Yeah.
Unfortunate, but they're developing heaps, proven by being able to win sets against some great teams.
Well, they've only looked better as the season's gotten longer, and that's just the pure fact of playing, getting the nerves out, getting experience, learning how to win. Like, you do have to learn how to win and take and be present at the end of sets. But yeah.
So it's good seeing it, tracking it. If you follow the Instagram, you can see some of the stories I was posting there as well, because I said, Vipers could get to second. And I actually took that one down.
Because you were wrong.
Because they immediately dropped the set.
Yeah.
And I went, second is now out of reach.
Yeah.
It's whether they finish third or fourth.
Well, actually, there is a scenario where Vipers could have lost that set and then still end up coming second if they got the bonus point, that they weren't getting the bonus point with how close that game was.
Yeah, as soon as you start to drop sets or close, you don't get the bonus point.
But we did say the same thing for the women's.
And then they won 18-7.
And
so
then, they got the bonus point.
You get at 11 points. That makes it a lot
Real
easier
easy.
to get above 20. But so the Storm finished third. So that semi-final will now be the Pirates versus the Storm.
Yeah.
Very interesting, those teams. The Storm are probably indifferent with who they were versing between. It would have been Pirates or Steel.
Yeah, I think, we can talk about matchups. Well, yeah, you guys will.
In our nice long episode coming later this week, we'll be
Yeah.
going in depth on players, matchups, how teams are running, and what we're
going to break down the identity of these teams and how because we didn't want to do that at the start of the season, because each year teams bring different people, different rosters, and identities can change. So in our episode on Friday, we will be breaking down the identity of all the men's and women's teams and how we expect them to play for their identity and how we expect them to play into their strengths to try and get wins over teams. A lot to say about all these top 4 teams on both sides, because they do have very clear and relatively distinct identities, I think, in the play style of some of these teams and some of these coaches as well.
Yeah.
In the use of power plays and subs and just the messaging that goes to the court, it can be very different. So keep an eye out for that.
Yeah.
That'll be a good episode to really sink your teeth into. And keep an eye out for some of the things that we say or maybe that we get wrong and that coaches sort of go, nah, I'm changing the whole thing for semis and here we go. We're going to see how it works. Like,
There's so much variation in volleyball, game to game, set to set. Players are very versatile and can shift across positions. Stats are very variable. So there's lots of variations that can happen across the season.
it's also hard because it's such a short season.
Yeah, the short
7
format.
games match.
Short format, short season.
Yeah, 7 games match is it's tough for Alex and I to build these information data sets and sort of be like, all right, how does this team actually play? And yeah, well, we can give it a crack and see how this goes into the semis. It will certainly be a really exciting weekend, I think.
Yeah. And our fourth team, rounding out that top 4 for the semi-finals, probably a little disappointed that they actually had I think their best matchup would have been against Queensland. I reckon they would have hoped for that.
Yeah. And they could have
done it if they maybe had a little bit more riding on this game, but I think they got a bit comfortable.
Technically no, because they had no control over Adelaide Storm.
I think they had reserved themselves to finishing 4th and playing the WA Steel based on assuming Storm would get a clean sweep of the Canberra Heat.
But if
that didn't happen,
they should have stepped on the gas and gone, all right, let's put the Steel, let's put the Storm in 4th and let's go take Queensland. I think that's also their better matchup.
Yeah, but they'll be doing a little extra video. The Melbourne Vipers finish in 4th.
Yeah.
They will be playing the WA Steel. They did get the win over them in the regular season in what was politely
not Steel's best game.
A low quality slog.
Yeah.
Because it didn't really seem like the Steel's best game.
No.
And stick hitters weren't super strong or efficient. And the Vipers, I think, weren't super strong in that game either, weren't amazing on their defensive movement.
Well, we did the stats for that game, and I remember seeing a above average amount of errors from both teams and a lower than average kill percentage from main players, notably Hepton Stall and Sando.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be about, especially all 4 of these semifinals on both sides, it's going to be about how much do you rely on those bigger players and how efficient are they in those moments? Ideally, you don't have to rely. Like if your distribution's good and everyone's in full swing, but for that match when Vipers won over Steel, it was a very, very rough, wild game. Vipers won it out in the end, but I'd be curious to see how both teams respond in the semi-final. It will definitely be a different game, I expect.
Because it is who is next up on each of these teams. We've done a little bit of stats on like per game averages, and Thomas Heppenstall's averaging across playing every game 27 attacks.
Which is absurd.
It's a high usage, but it's seeing not far down the list is their outside Kai Landers. It's seeing if he can sustain a high efficiency at a high usage. Because in a trend you will see is the higher usage you have, you probably expect your efficiency to drop a little bit because you're being used more out of system. You're not getting the best favorable. You're being over-relied on. Double blocks will shift to you a little bit more. There's a lot of challenges that come with that. But Vipers have a very similar game in they overload a lot of ball through Paul Sanderson.
Yeah.
So it's about seeing if more usage could be funneled through their middles. Noah Van Gemst had a great game on the weekend. Actually got a lot more balls. I think he had 9 attacks, which is pretty decent for a middle.
And 7 points
7 kills.
Yeah.
So if you can shift it there to your other outside, Scott Johnson, he's sort of been a bit lower on the usage spectrum, but very efficient.
Yeah.
If he could get used a bit more and that efficiency hold, that's what you can do to find a win against a team like the Steel.
Especially at this level too, it's like, yes, you do have those massive players like your Tom Heppenstall, your Paul Sanderson. But like we see at the top level and like we see all the way from the top level down to State League, you've got those really, really good players, but you don't want to be setting them 30 balls a game. You want to be relying on the 5 other guys on the court to bring them up. And then when you really need a point, all right, now we go to our guy. I don't think Steel win if they're setting Heppers 35, 40 times. And I don't think Vipers win if they're doing the same to Sando.
Yeah.
I think, you give them 20 balls and see how good they are. And then everyone else is getting 10, 15 and just see where that puts you and hope that that's enough to get you across the line.
The gap between the top teams and the sort of lower rung, because the team that the Vipers played on the weekend, New South Wales Phoenix, did play pretty well. I think they'd be reasonably happy with how they closed out the season. I really like their setter. Jack Kroll came on They double sub a lot, which you don't normally see in a shorter format. A lot of teams haven't really been doing it.
Less subs as well, so it's rare.
Yeah.
But both their outsides, 21 and 27 points, everyone else below 10.
Yeah.
So that's far too much swaying.
Through the sticks. Through Rob Murdoch and Fraser Garrett.
Yeah.
Fraser Garrett. Rob Murdoch's kill efficiency dropped a little bit. It's not super high. Same as Fraser Garrett's, but like...
Still hitting at 56 and 48%.
Fraser Garrett was at 56?
Yeah.
Yeah. Pretty darn good.
That's pretty good.
They run a pretty stick-heavy game. The Garretts, I think, take over the New South Wales team because when older brother was playing earlier in the season, Ethan Garrett, he actually has the highest usage in the league.
Yeah.
Across his 2 games, he hit an average of 29 balls.
Which is silly.
Which is a lot. Which
That's
is silly.
That's really silly.
And Fraser Garrett's actually 3rd. So they do get used a lot of balls. They have pretty decent kill efficiency, so they still do well in that. Not super high on the errors, but
I will say, like, I think the biggest thing that lets down this New South Wales team is probably their middles. They're just not efficient enough. Props to the setter who sets their middles. You know, I'm looking at 8, 9, 8. The rest of them are on 2. Everyone got on the court, but no one's percentage is above 50% as a middle, which is a little bit low.
Maybe that comes with improving your passing a little bit.
Passed at 40%.
40%? Oh, I'll take that
terrible.
back.
But I will say, matching up against Melbourne Vipers, like Noah Van Gam's
3 blocks.
Like that's tough. Also at 86% efficiency. Ridiculous. And Cunny played the rest of the match. Didn't get set a whole lot. Actually, didn't do a whole lot at all. Wait, no, I'm looking at the wrong line. Sorry. Hitting at 60%, 1 block. 3 from 5. Not too bad.
When a setter can find a middle, they've really got to be able to finish points.
Yeah, definitely.
And that was probably a tough thing this weekend for
the New South Wales.
The Phoenix against a good defensive side around their middles as well. Darcy Cox has been real solid in his adjustment around blocks. Although Noah's got a pretty solid block. He gets in good spots, holds strong, penetrates well over the net, and then defenders can move around that.
I also don't know if anyone in the entire league gets as high as him other than maybe like Sam Peterino and Tom Heptestall.
Yeah.
And like that's it.
Or Steve McDonald, but that's because he has...
That's because he's like 2 meters
8
20
inches
tall.
On everyone. He's just that much taller.
Huge.
Yeah.
But going back to this distribution conversation, just real quick, we'll break it down in the bigger episode. But it's important to note, looking at the WA women, their distribution's really good. They get their middles involved so much,
and they run a little bit of a 3 utility system here and there. And again, so players are versatile in where they're attacking from, and they're keeping their efficiency high no matter where they're being used.
They look. This is going to be an interesting comparison, but I hope that it makes sense. If you look at the Japanese national team right now, they win 9 times out of 10 when all 3 of their pin hitters are hitting at like a similar level and both their middles are hitting at the same. Yeah. So if Ran, Ishikawa, and Nishida are all hitting around 15, and then like let's say it's a 5-setter or a 4-setter, whatever, and then both their middles are around 8, 9, 10. Like that's very similar to how these WA women's stats are looking.
Yeah,
and they're doing very, very well. On the other side of that, though, looking at like let's say like for comparison's sake, a Turkish women's team or a Poland men's team where your 3 sort of stick hitters are very, very dominant. This Adelaide Storm men's team, not that their middles aren't good, but their stick hitters they've just got so much depth there. When you're looking at Nathan Roberts, Simon Coate, Cooper Peacock, I said it last week as well, and Will Mercer to add to the mix as well, not to mention Finley Bennett and what's their other opposite? Regan Fathers.
Yeah, Regan Fathers.
That's 6 ridiculous outside hitters that you can probably distribute the ball to very evenly and they'll go to work.
Yeah.
Not to mention they got Harry Peacock. That's pretty handy. And he knows distribution far better than we do, and he probably knows exactly how to use those guys.
How to reset, go to the same players multiple times, keep everyone engaged rather than loading a player, freezing him out of the game, loading someone else, freezing them out of the game.
Yeah.
Moving
on.
Sorry. Yeah, we did this at the start of the season. We'll move on. How our finals predictions are shaping up.
Yeah.
So we did it after round 1. We waited after round 1 to see the teams that would show up and how they would look. Then we did our predictions. I want to start with yours.
Why?
Because they're outright wrong on the men's side.
They're not, though.
They're impossible.
Okay, they're impossible, but
that means one of them will be right, though.
I was wrong on So I was right with the top 4. That wasn't
Yeah.
super hard looking into after the first round. But I had for the gold medal match SA and Queensland. Annoyingly, that's going to be the semi-final.
So one of them will be in the gold medal. So you will be 50%
I will be half
right.
right. And then the bronze, Vipers and Steel. If I had to switch and change and do a prediction right now, I just think it's going to be SA and Steel.
Yeah, you're probably right.
And then Vipers, Queensland for the bronze.
So
For the women's though.
my men's prediction.
Oh, okay.
I think so. You're at least 50% right in
Yeah.
your gold medal match. Actually, I think I'm 100% wrong.
No, I think you're 100% right, but your gold and bronze need to be flipped.
Yeah, so I'm 100% wrong. I'm going to get 0 right in the gold and 0 right in the bronze because I had Queensland Vipers being in the gold because they looked pretty solid, but I think they lose their semi-final matchups.
Yours is the big upset result. Like if both teams upset the semis,
if Queensland really show up, I think they could do it
Queensland know
against
how to
SA. They know how to win.
They know how to win. Yeah.
Ben Bell's an incredible setter. He knows how to get that ball to his players.
And they haven't had a great deal of games with all of their guys.
Yeah, they sort of mixed it up a little bit. Marcus Ferguson has been their lib, been a pass hitter.
Mitch Tully's not been seen for a few rounds.
Yeah, Kieran Ivers changed out of lib as well.
Ben Bell didn't set for 2 rounds. Or 1 round.
They brought in Elijah. Yeah, so they've had a lot of shifts week to week. I think they'll bring everyone back in and really refocus. And then I had, my bronze. I think WA matches up pretty solid against the Vic side, just in terms of being an opposite heavy team.
Whereas Vipers aren't an opposite heavy team.
I mean, Darcy Tager's done a really long episode. Watch it. Darcy Tager's done a really good job to find usage in a team that doesn't run behind.
Yeah. But moving on. So for the women, I had the Vipers and Queensland for the gold medal match. And for the bronze medal match, I had WA and SA. Going back to who's going to play who for the women. So it'll be Vipers and Storm and Steel and Pirates. So actually, both of those matches are likely.
Yeah.
If I had to change that though, I think I might flip that. I feel like the gold medal match is probably going to be WA and SA, and the bronze is probably going to be Vipers and Queensland.
Yeah.
Vipers might sneak through.
I think
because who are they playing in their semi?
I think I had
SA.
in the gold Vipers versus SA, but that's not possible because they're playing in the semi.
Yeah.
Tough thing about predictions. That'll be really interesting. I do think that's a bit of a toss-up based on that is probably the best women's game I've seen this season was them playing each other in the regular season.
I agree. That game is going to be about if SA, because I think SA are probably stronger through the middle than we are. I think if Katie Tipping and Eliza Carly-Hines show up for that game, it won't be a contest.
And if they can find a way to introduce their middles again.
Yeah. Like
that'll
us
be
or them?
big. Vipers.
Yeah, I agree.
Can introduce their middles. SA have a lot of experience in their middles and they do use them enough. They are a team that also has a lot of usage through Rebecca Reeve.
Who's an unreal middle.
Who has been, let's just do a little thing. I think she's been, actually, all right, so both teams, similar issues, have very high usage players. Katie Tipping, who's only been there for 3 games, has missed a few, is the highest used player in the league, and Rebecca Reeve is 3rd. They both have high usage through their outside and opposite.
I think it's going to be about who passes best in that game.
Yeah.
Because if, basically in my head, if Vipers women can pass well and run fast through the sticks and through the middle, and the middles can hold the SA middles, Eliza Carly-Hines, Katie Tipping, and Gwen Thornton, I imagine that's probably the 3 strongest stick hitters at the moment. If they can terminate really fast and delay that middle blocker and utilize seam and line, they'll probably do pretty well. But if Vipers can't pass well and SA get double blocks to everything, it'll be really, really tough to beat players like Rebecca Reeves. But if SA pass really well, I think they're just going to dominate through the middle. I think they're very middle heavy and they have sort of been most of the season.
And the other semi, WA versus Queensland, is the 2 teams I picked in my bronze. So wrong there as well.
Yeah.
But I think Queensland hasn't looked as strong as we thought they were going to this season.
They just haven't really looked like they gel that well. They look like they're out of system too often for what they should be, considering they've got really strong middles as well.
But WA, even though they've had the personnel changes, look like a very strong unit great to the middle, great blocking.
I think they'll make it through to
The gold.
Yeah, I think so. I think the gold will probably be WA Vipers or WASA. That semi-final between Vipers and SA is going to be a heater, I reckon. I think the WA Queensland one, I think WA win that. Fair. Not comfortably, but if they play well, they'll win.
So for those that don't know, as well, the shift for the semi-finals, no point in playing compulsory 5 sets in a semi. So it goes back to being best of 5, but all other rules stay the same. It is still to 18.
Win by 2.
Win by 2,
It
sorry.
is win by 2, yeah.
But it is now best of 5.
Power play is still in effect.
Power play is still in effect.
Still
no
only-
timeouts.
Still only 6 subs.
6 subs. It's
One other
just a
thing
lot
of note,
shorter.
which we would love clarification of. If anyone knows, please do tell us. But for some reason, and I will say some reason because it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me, but the majority of the season, well, no, all of the season, teams are only allowed 10 players.
Yeah.
Traveling rosters, home rosters, you're only allowed 10. Finals, you're allowed 12. So unsure on that decision. Maybe because it's 2 games back to back. But a lot
bit
of
of
us,
insurance for injury, maybe.
Yeah, but
bringing
like-
him to SA.
tournaments you played 6 games a weekend and you're fine. Ideally you're fine. Injuries that suck, yes, but I think that shouldn't be a decision for how many players you're allowed or not allowed. So 12. So potentially you'll see some coaches take probably less multi-positional players and more specialized players because you do get the full roster of 12. So you get players that only do one thing, but they do it excellent, as opposed to maybe players that aren't as excellent at one thing, but can do a variety of roles pretty well.
Depending what you see as potentially going wrong. Maybe teams bring a second libero as a defensive sub.
Also that.
Or a serving sub or just another opposite in case opposites go poorly, because a lot of teams have only been bringing sort of the one opposite or
and
a
then
middle
a pass hitter that
opposite
can
or
do
a pass
both.
hitter opposite.
Yeah.
So now you can really bring those specialized players.
Yeah. I think we will see very, very specialized roles in the semifinals and finals, which is good. I think that's what it should be all the time.
Yeah.
But moving into when and how the semifinals work. So there's 2 sessions on the Saturday and then 2 sessions on the Sunday, which is basically just semifinal 1, semifinal 2, both men and women back to back, all on SBS On Demand. So session 1, so that's the Saturday at 1 p.m. Adelaide, so Australian Eastern Standard Time, I believe. Daylight saving literally kicked in last night, so I actually have no idea. Probably around then. Game 1 is the men Perth Steel versus the Melbourne Vipers. Game 2 is at 2:30. That'll be followed by the women.
No, it's men. So it's
you're right. Yeah,
it's
sorry.
2 games of men in the first session. So you will just watch some men's volleyball. No need to change the net heights. The second game is Queensland Pirates versus Adelaide Storm at 2:30. And then there'll be a short break before session 2 at 4:30. The women Perth Steel versus the Queensland Pirates, and then 6 p.m. The final semi will be Melbourne Vipers versus Adelaide Storm women.
Yeah.
And all these games, I believe, are happening at 36 Arena in
all of
Adelaide Storm.
Yeah.
In Adelaide. In
Adelaide. Yeah.
And so they will all be do or die before the finals, which will happen on the Sunday.
Yeah. And then the Sunday is, so session 1 is both bronze medals, and then session 2 is both gold medals. So 10 a.m. game 1 bronze medal, 11:30 a.m. roughly game 2 bronze medal. Session 2 will be 1:30 p.m., which is the first gold medal match, and then the 3 p.m., which is the second gold medal match. All of that on SBS On Demand. Excited to see how all this shapes up for what has been a pretty chaotic season, which is with the way that all the ladders have just been like, I don't know, I felt really confident with our predictions at the start of the season, and then as the season progressed, I was like, ooh.
Yeah, the matchups sort of shook out differently to what we probably thought.
Yeah.
Top fours were right.
And then even like the round just gone on the weekend, we sort of were like, oh yeah, pretty confident with how this is going to turn up. And then
I was looking at the ladder and the point percentage. If you followed the stories, I was editing the ladder and then was like, Vipers will get 31 or 33 competition points based on the rest of this game. Oops, wrong. They got a bonus point. And then I was doing some set percentage calculations on the side and was thinking about trying to do the point percentage calculations because that was
It's
what
too
it was going to
much.
come down to. So I just eyeballed it and went, yeah, their point percentage should probably go up.
Yeah.
I mean, if you win a game, your point percentage
It will
is going to
go
go
up.
up.
Yeah.
But
Especially-
it's about how much or how extreme.
Well, especially when you win the last set,
18-7.
18-7. Yeah.
So that was the biggest achievement of the weekend. I think the biggest highlight, winning 18-7. 18-7.
That was off the back of Gwen Thornton's serve, I believe.
Yeah.
And 3 out of 3 power plays. I can't quite remember. We were there, but I was
Yeah.
filming. It's hard to, side note, very hard to film volleyball through a camera and keep an eye on like what's actually happening. You know, but
I mean, Alicia Bashiri had 3 aces. Gwen Thornton had 3 aces. I think they came in the 5th set, if I remember correctly as well. A fair few of them.
I think you're right. Yeah. All right. Thank you for joining us today on this episode for the MAVSL round 6 and final round recap. Catch the Friday episode. We're going to go in depth in all the teams and their play styles, their tendencies, give you the best possible intro into what we expect to see this weekend.
It'll be what we want to do more of in the future as well. We'll be doing lots of player analysis, their stats. We've got sort of like per game averages, how players are being used.
Yeah.
Lots of stuff. And then follow our Instagram as well. We've got lots of stuff planned.
Got
And,
lots of graphics.
and we'll have other things planned now that the MAVSL season is wrapping up. So
Yeah.
hang around with us and we'll make it worth it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for that.
Thank you.